Recently, the people of Bracciano, Italy, were asked to taste some
The incredible drama of nature as no one else can bring it to you. Discover their wonder, their majesty, and their timeless secrets for survival as you meet the most spectacular creatures on Earth, animals in action.
I believe we can build a community here that more people will talk about and come to look at than any other area in the world.
Walter Elias Disney was a man of many dreams. He dreamed a mouse could become a movie star.
You know, Mickey Mouse?
And that his supporting cast should be a duck, a dog, another mouse, and oh yeah, another dog. He dreamed that audiences would actually come to the movie theaters to see feature-length cartoons. He dreamed that animals could star in their own series. He dreamed that he could create an amusement park that would fascinate adults as much as children. Yes, Walt Disney was a man of many dreams, and anyone who has laughed at his cartoons, forgotten their troubles for a day at one of his theme parks, or been touched by one of his motion pictures, is thankful that his dreams came true. It's only fitting that perhaps his greatest and most ambitious project of all would bear his name, for Walt Disney World is truly a dream come true. It's not known exactly when Walt Disney got the idea for a second Magic Kingdom, but even as Disneyland was experiencing unprecedented success, Walt was envisioning plans for a theme resort complete with hotels and recreational facilities that would serve as a total vacation opportunity for the whole family. Disneyland was a hit, but his newest dream would not be another Disneyland, because Walt Disney was a man who simply would not repeat himself. This was a lesson Walt learned from the Three Little Pigs. In his early career, that cartoon had been an unparalleled success, and it was suggested he make more cartoons featuring his newest stars. But when his sequels, The Big Bad Wolf, Three Little Wolves, and The Practical Pig couldn't come close to the sensation caused by the original, Walt had a new saying to live by: you can't top pigs with pigs. But how could he possibly hope to top Disneyland? Within its first 2 years of operation, it was already considered America's biggest tourist attraction. Most men would have rested on their laurels, but Walt was ready to pursue Project X.
He didn't spend a lot of time talking about Disneyland. In fact, he told us in many meetings, he said, look, you guys know how to do a Disneyland. I'm talking about something past Disneyland. And it was very exciting, his concepts, because in my opinion, what Walt was trying to do, he was trying to show how, through the free enterprise system, you could take virgin land and develop it properly and enhance the environment rather than take away from it, and also, frankly, without government subsidy.
At the time when I heard about Project X, I was on sort of the public end of show business in Disney. I was working down at Disneyland as a ride operator while in college, and the way people down at that particular level hear about things is usually through 3 or 4 generations of shaman that are passing on down the information. And in my particular case, we heard about Project X as something in a Florida swamp somewhere, and it was very, very sketchy.
WED Enterprises, an acronym for Walter Elias Disney, would once again be called upon for its creative and technical know-how. WED was a personal organization Walt formed in order to work on his projects outside the film studio. It had turned Disneyland into reality with a group of talented designers, architects, engineers, craftsmen, and technicians, collectively known as Imagineers. WED Enterprises, which was recently renamed Walt Disney Imagineering, had learned a great deal during the construction and operation of Disneyland. But a new theme park was only the beginning of Walt's newest dream. He had a much bigger concept in mind that would stretch the creative and technical skills of the Imagineers to their limits.
With Walt, nothing was ever always right. He felt that you could always improve on things. And again, repeating that intangible quality called perfection, and who knows when you reach it, so you keep reaching.
I think he was able to get out of people what they didn't even realize they had to give, or that they had, or that the abilities that he had people perform things that they never knew that they could do before. And once you did them, you felt so good about the accomplishment.
The plan was in motion. A new theme park, bigger than Disneyland, was to be built. But where? As early as 1958, the research began which would determine the best location for a second Magic Kingdom. The result was not surprising to Walt.
Walt wanted a lot of land, and Florida offered a lot of land at a reasonable price. The primary reason you have to look at, though, is either a good local population or a good tourist population. In those days, Florida was doing about 20 million tourists a year. The third thing that we needed was major access. There was a major road, I-4, that was going right through the property, an airport very close, so the transportation systems were very, very good. And weather, a very important factor. It rains in Florida, but year-round, the Florida weather is very, very good. So those four factors really made Florida the selection quite quickly.
There were few mistakes made at Disneyland, but one that Walt was ready to admit and unable to correct was the fact that they hadn't bought enough land to protect the area surrounding the park. He felt that it had become too gaudy and crowded with hotels and fast food places that created a carnival-like atmosphere. He knew they must buy enough land to control the environment around the park because it was the reason people were coming there. Walt was determined this time to find an area that he was sure would be large enough to encompass all his dreams. The process of securing the land had begun with a great deal of secrecy to keep the cost from soaring. As the Disney organization secretly bought parcels of land throughout Central Florida, people began to speculate as to the mystery buyer. It was anybody's guess, and they ranged from Douglas, Lockheed, and Boeing to a nuclear power plant, the Hercules Powder Company. Even Howard Hughes and Rockefeller were mentioned, along with the Ford Motor Company, Leisure World, and, of course, Disney.
We set up 5 dummy corporations, and we purchased land keeping the Disney name out of it. In fact, if it hadn't leaked out by an Orlando Sentinel reporter, we probably would have still been buying land.
On November 15, 1965, over 27,000 acres had been purchased, and it was time to formally announce to the press Walt's dream.
It's been a wonderful reception that you've given us here. All the faces seem friendly, and we feel very much at home. And it's just a big, exciting project for us, too, you know. And in fact, it's the biggest thing we've ever tackled.
As he had done with Disneyland, Walt was soon ready to share his plans for the Florida Disney project with the world, this time on TV.
Walt used television as a vehicle to talk about his Disneyland, his park, and those shows in those days were very, very popular and very successful. And anytime we do a special day on Walt Disney World or Disneyland, they're still very popular with the American public.
The sketches and plans you will see today are simply a starting point. Our first overall thinking about Disney World. Everything in this room may change time and time again as we move ahead. But the basic philosophy of what we're planning for Disney World is going to remain very much as it is right now. We know what our goals are. We know what we hope to accomplish. And believe me, it's the most exciting and challenging assignment we've ever tackled at Walt Disney Productions. We're now developing a master plan that encompasses the theme park and all the facilities around it that will serve the tourists. Hotels, motels, and a variety of recreation activities. Here in Florida, we have something special we never enjoyed at Disneyland, the blessing of size. There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. The most important part of our Florida project, in fact, the heart of everything we'll be doing in Disney World, will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow. We call it Epcot, spelled E-P-C-O-T, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Here it is in larger scale. Epcot will take its cue from the new ideas and new technologies that are now emerging from the creative centers of American industry. It will be a community of tomorrow that will never be completed, but will always be introducing and testing and demonstrating new materials and new systems. And Epcot will always be a showcase to the world for the ingenuity and imagination of American free enterprise.
The initial plan for Disney's development in Florida called for 2 theme parks. The first was a new and expanded version of Disneyland to be called the Magic Kingdom. But the second was the one that fascinated Walt. It was where he would concentrate his energy and creativity. It would become Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow.
He knew that whatever he did, the best thing that he could do was to create an example. And if he could do exactly what Epcot said it was going to be, an experimental prototype community, and community was a carefully chosen word rather than city, community of tomorrow, that he could set an example so high that people would respond to it, they could sit in it, they could touch it, they could ride in its transportation vehicles, they could live in it. They could then carry that message and those exciting ideas back to their own communities.
Walt was soon engrossed with Epcot and wanted to be sure it included every possible scientific advance of the future.
So that's what Epcot is, an experimental prototype community that will always be in a state of becoming. It will never cease to be a living blueprint of the future, where people actually live a life they can't find anywhere else in the world.
On December 15th, 1966, the world was stunned to learn that Walter Elias Disney, the man who had turned so many dreams into reality, was dead.
This is Beach Rogers in the KFWB newsroom. We have a bulletin from Burbank, which is going to sadden the entire world. Walt Disney, the man who built an entertainment empire on a cartoon character, has died today at the age of 65. Of course, he was the creator of Mickey Mouse, the beloved cartoon characters, and Disneyland. Walt Disney, dead at the age of 65 this morning.
Shortly after Walt's death, his older brother Roy released this message to the press. As president and chairman of the board of Walt Disney Productions, I want to assure the public, our stockholders, and each of our more than 4,000 employees that we will continue to operate Walt Disney's company in the way that he has established and guided it. Walt Disney spent his entire life and almost every waking hour in the creative planning of motion pictures, Disneyland, television shows, and all the other diversified activities that have carried his name through the years. Around him, Walt Disney gathered the kind of creative people who understood his way of communicating with the public through entertainment. Walt's ways were always unique, and he built a unique organization, a team of creative people that he was justifiably proud of.
Well, I think by this time, my staff, my young group of executives are convinced that Walt is right, that quality will out. So I think they're going to stay with that policy because it's proven that it's a good business policy. Give the public everything you can give them. Keep the place as clean as you can keep it. Keep it friendly. You know, make it a real fun place to be. I think they're convinced, and I think that'll hang on after, as you say, after Disney.
And once again, Walt was right. His brother took over the Disney World project as it had been known up to the time of Walt's death, and one of his first acts was to officially rename the project Walt Disney World. So, as Roy put it, people will always know that this is Walt's dream.
When Walt died, there was a great concern on the part of our company because Roy Disney was actually retiring at that time. And God bless him, he climbed back in the saddle and he asked of some of the executives, what do you guys think? Can we do it without Walt? I think we all said the same thing. We don't know, but we ought to try. Roy Disney even started sitting in creative meetings and put his boots on and was on walkthroughs, and he rode helicopters looking at the property, and his role changed dramatically, and he became the leader that gave us confidence that we could do it. And he worked very hard because, more than anything, Roy wanted to bring into reality the first phase of what his brother had in mind.
The construction of Walt Disney World was an enormous task. At its peak in 1970, it represented the largest private construction project in the United States.
The first time that most of us had really seen the Walt Disney World property was in the fall of 1967, and at that time, the only thing that had been done, or there were two things that had been done on the land. One was to begin a tree farm where we were testing certain varieties of trees to see whether they could be grown in that kind of soil and climate. And the second was a clearing of about 100 acres where the Magic Kingdom was. In fact, we put a big white mark in the middle with an X in the middle of it. And that was the center where the castle was going to go in the Magic Kingdom. And if you stood at that spot and looked around you, there was nothing. And so it was very difficult to say that 1 mile over in that direction, we were going to put the Contemporary Resort Hotel, and another half mile in this direction is where the Polynesian Village was going to go, and the parking area would go 2 miles that way. So what we determined to do was to do a stakeout, and the stakeout was done primarily with large balloons so that you could stand at various places on the project and be able to see where those developments were going to go.
During the first phase of the construction of Walt Disney World, over 8 million cubic yards of earth were moved. That's enough to fill the Empire State Building more than 5 times. More than 8,000 workers representing every kind of building skill worked on the Magic Kingdom. In the words of Walt Disney, you can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make the dream a reality. On October 1st, 1971, the grandest of all of Walt Disney's dreams became a reality.
Walt Disney World is a tribute to the philosophy and the life of Walter Elias Disney, and to the talents, the dedication, and the loyalty of the entire Disney organization that made Walt Disney's dream come true.
Roy Disney picked up the ball and dedicated himself to making Walt Disney's dream of Walt Disney World a reality, and Roy Disney was a tremendous support and driving force to really carry out his brother's great dream.
Our entire company, to a person, directed their energies in one direction, and that was to get Walt Disney World open. It was a tough opening, but we made it, and I think that's the great thing about our company. When we turn our energies in one direction, there isn't anything that we can't do.
We all remember seeing years ago those slick, futuristic drawings saying what the future of the American city was going to be. Gleaming buildings, fast monorails, people in one place, cars in another. Well, this is the future, and none of it has happened. Nobody has done it but Disney. It is the most imaginative and most effective piece of urban planning in America. On this, they have built roads, transportation systems, lakes, golf courses, campgrounds, riding stables, stores, hotels, and so on. And they all fit together in a setting of land, air, and water better than any other urban environment in America.
Although Walt Disney never lived to see Walt Disney World, there's little doubt that it fulfills his dream of providing a complete vacation destination for the entire family. When you enter the Magic Kingdom, 6 unique lands await you: Main Street USA, Fantasyland, Frontierland, Adventureland, Liberty Square, and Tomorrowland. A very defined philosophy was applied to the planning of Walt Disney World. Walt didn't want the guests to see the world they live in while they're in the park. He wanted them to feel they're in another world. Great attention has been given to colors and architecture to ensure that there is a smooth blending from one area to another. Just inside the gates of the Magic Kingdom, guests are first taken back to the good old days as they stroll down Main Street USA, designed as a small American town around the 1900s. Its quaint buildings have been built at about 7/8 scale at street level and smaller at the higher stories. This bit of Disney Imagineering creates a much more intimate setting. And if one chooses to walk rather than ride in one of the horse-drawn trolleys or vintage horseless carriages, they'll find their legs won't get quite so tired because of a special resilient asphalt used to pave the walks. Located along Main Street are many shops, a railroad station, a firehouse, a penny arcade, and at the Main Street Cinema, one of Walt's old friends can be seen in his first sound cartoon. What most guests don't realize as they enjoy their day in the Magic Kingdom is that hidden just a few feet below them is another world. That world is part of an area known as backstage. Walt insisted the theme park be treated as if it were a show. Guests were the audience, and employees were members of the cast. They were either on stage in view of the audience, such as the ride operators and concessionaires, or backstage out of view of the guests. The backstage area beneath the Magic Kingdom enables cast members to keep the show above moving smoothly. Innovatively designed with a series of crisscrossing corridors called utilidors that cover nearly 9 acres, this urban basement allows maintenance trucks, supplies, and cast members to move freely from one section of the park to another without disturbing the guests. Makeup rooms, dressing rooms, design and decorating facilities are just some of the departments found here. The wardrobe department is one of the most extensive, providing costumes for the largest show anywhere, a cast of nearly 20,000.
we have a very important function that goes on in our wardrobe departments every day, and that's issuing clean costumes to all our employees and making sure that they fit right and that they're clean and pressed and neat and they are up to work on time. So we have a very timely job to do also. The costumed employees at Walt Disney World do not take their costumes home with them. We maintain everything on property. We do their laundry for them. Every day we give them a clean costume. We provide lockers for them where they can lock their own personal clothes up when they're working in their costume. We repair their costumes. That's what's going on right here. The buttons are being sewn back on. The zippers that don't work anymore are being replaced. The hems that are falling out are being repaired for them. So it's a total service for the employee as far as costume maintenance, repair, and laundry is concerned. Even though we're not here to set fashion trends or anything like that, Minnie Mouse definitely has a new look this year. This is the year of Minnie, totally Minnie. We want her more updated and competing in the marketplace almost with the other females that are out there also.
Walt Disney dedicated Fantasyland to the young at heart, to those who believe that when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. Cinderella's castle is the landmark entrance to Fantasyland. Its foyer walls contain 5 mosaic panels illustrating scenes from this classic fairy tale. Just inside the castle courtyard sits a graceful bronze statue of Cinderella. Once you pass through the castle, you have entered what Walt called a timeless land of entertainment. Inspired by Disney's classic animated films, Fantasyland is for young and old. Adventure, romance, and mystery. That's how Walt described Adventureland. Tropical rivers that silently flowed in the unknown. Exotic animals and the eerie sound of the jungle. Disney Imagineers artfully blended trees, bushes, and flowers to create a little bit of paradise. One tree not of nature, but of steel and concrete, is the Swiss Family Treehouse, inspired by the 1960 Disney film. Standing 90 feet tall, its concrete roots go 42 feet into the soil, and its 600 branches are covered with 800,000 vinyl leaves. Like its forerunner at Disneyland, the Pirates of the Caribbean at Walt Disney World is a very popular Adventureland attraction that features a fun-loving band of buccaneers. And for the Armchair Explorer, the Jungle Cruise, another Disneyland and Walt Disney World favorite, sends you down a tropical river, past hippos, lions, and fearsome headhunters.
I'll tell you, this is the kind of guy Walt was. When I was a young man in charge of Frontierland and Adventureland, he got on the boat and he got a 4.5-minute trip. And he got off and he said, "How long was that trip supposed to be, Dick?" And I said, 7 minutes, sir. He says, "Well, I got a 4.5-minute trip. How would you feel if you went to the movies and he cut the center reel out of the picture?" He said, "I went through that hippo pool so fast I couldn't tell whether they were rhinos or hippos." So he said, you know, we've got to make sure the show's always right, particularly regardless of whether there's a long wait or not. He gave me 3 weeks to shape it up, and he came back in 3 weeks, and he went on the first boat, the second boat, the third boat. We only had 7 in those days, and he went on all 7 of them. Got off the boat and said, "Thumbs up."
Frontierland was Walt's tribute to the faith, courage, and ingenuity of the pioneers who blazed the trails across America. Recreated like the old weathered western towns of the 1800s, Frontierland is built along the Rivers of America waterway. Whether the boat is a Mississippi sternwheeler, a keel boat, or a log raft, passengers get a first-hand glimpse at Tom Sawyer Island, an Indian village, and reaching 197 feet into the air, the highest mountain in Florida, Big Thunder Mountain. Its runaway mine trains offer the wildest ride in the wilderness. At Grizzly Hall, mechanical musicians serenade guests in a hand-clapping production called the Country Bear Jamboree. No less than 17 bears, a raccoon, and talking buffalo, stag and moose heads put on a show that's a tribute to Disney Imagineering and the process they created called audio animatronics.
The Bear Band will play now in the good old key of G. Zeke and Zeb and Ted and Fred and the bear named Tennessee.
The first audio animatronic figures made their debut in 1963 at Disneyland's Enchanted Tiki Room. As the name implies, audio animatronics combine sound, animation, and electronics in a technique Walt described as another dimension of animation.
Well, it's a sort of another door that's opened for us. See, our whole 40-some-odd years here has been in the world of making things move, inanimate things move. From a drawing, through all kinds of any little props and things, through the use of electronics. It's a tape mechanism that the tape, it's like a programming or sequencing when they do a missile, when they're sending some missile to the moon, say. At different stages, at different times, things must happen. That's all programmed, predetermined. So our show is put on that tape, and it's programmed from this tape. And we run it off a little 1-inch tape that has 14 tracks. And on each track, we can get up to 16 signals. Now, those little signals go and impulse this figure and make the figure move, make the figure talk. Now, these are not working from tape. These are manually controlled. This little gizmo here, kind of like a joystick on the old type airplanes, is what gives us a chance to program the bird. And as we work this and get all the little movements that we want in the bird out, we record it on the tape. And then from then on, the tape will do everything that we've done here.
Having mastered the movements of animals, Walt was convinced that audio animatronics could be successfully used with human figures. For the 1964 World's Fair in New York, he proposed an attraction called the Hall of Presidents, which would recreate moving and talking life-sized figures of all the United States chief executives. However, this project was too ambitious to be built in time for the fair, so Walt built Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, which became a huge success and found a permanent home at Disneyland after the fair. But the Hall of Presidents is another example of one of Walt's dreams that came true in Walt Disney World. Its steeple dominates the skyline in Liberty Square, where the spirit of 1776 has been reborn. Inside, you'll be introduced to the 40 presidents of the United States, gathered on one stage in a stirring spectacle of Americana and American ingenuity. And just around the corner from the Hall of Presidents, the Disney Imagineers have created a poltergeist paradise known as the Haunted Mansion. It's a happy haunting ground. Just as Frontierland and Liberty Square take a nostalgic look at our past, Tomorrowland takes a bold look into the future. The Disney Imagineers have created an environment that allows technology to take over. Racing through the cosmos in Space Mountain, soaring in a star jet on a high-speed adventure, taking a lap in a Grand Prix racer, or even a trip to Mars. That's a visit to Tomorrowland and a world of innovation, such as the revolutionary Wedway People Mover, state-of-the-art transportation using pollution-free electricity. And if Tomorrowland whets the appetite for the future, it's only a short ride away on still another Disney innovation, the Mark IV monorail, which whisks you to 500 acres of the most imaginative and exciting man-made attractions in the world, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. In October of 1982, the most ambitious phase of Walt's dream was open for all to see and enjoy. And whether arriving by monorail or automobile, there's tremendous anticipation at the first sight of the world's largest geosphere. It foretells a very special place, 180 feet in diameter, and rising more than 18 stories above the ground, Spaceship Earth, the symbol of Epcot Center. Its unique construction enables it to be